Hello everyone, Simon here. Welcome back to our architecture tour of Skyrim. So the next city we want to visit is Riften. So let's
Need a ride?
take
Where
the
do you want to go?
carriage over to Riften. Riften, there you
Grab
go.
and back and we'll be off.
And let's see what this is about. So Riften is in the
You want to watch yourself in
southeastern
Riften,
corner
ways to get
of
yourself in
Morrowind.
trouble
I mean,
now.
not Morrowind, in Skyrim. It's next to Morrowind, near the border, and also near the border with Cyrodiil as well. So, to the north, it's colder to the north, right? So let me just go to the map. So we were there in Windhelm, and it's colder at the north. So the equator is somewhere to the south. And so it's warmer here. And Morrowind is that way, Cyrodiil is down this way. So we are in the in the southeastern corner of the game. And Riften, when you get off the carriage, looks like this, which is not very impressive. But we've seen so far that these cities are sometimes impressive, depending on where you look at it from. So I do know where the concept art for Riften is. It's over here. So the best view of the city is in fact from the water, believe it or not. It's a little bit weird, but bear with me for a moment. So look at that. It's a port. It's a port city. It's a port with a city behind it. Look at that. And even that's not the best view, right? So let me just come over here and take a look at this. Hey, that's cool. Can I wait till daytime or just wait for an hour? Hey, there you go. So there's Riften, a city by the lake, and you can kind of see the buildings, kind of like layers, buildings behind buildings, right, all the way into the city. It's not that special, but it looks kind of good. In fact, I think the best view is over here in the middle of the lake, which again, like Solitude, it doesn't really make sense that this would be the best view of the city. Just in terms of design, like why would you put the best view of the city here? Look at this. That's pretty good, look at that. So that's the castle there, it's the tallest building, right? And I mean, if we can fly upwards, it might look even better if we were in the sky. So yeah, so this is the best view of the city, which is not that impressive. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not that impressive. So it's like it's a town. It's a pretty generic town. And so the problem with this view is that nobody ever comes here. Not really. It's like why would you be in the middle of the lake? So we are at Riften. There is a lake around here, and so there's a path to Riften this way, and there's a path to Riften this way. And if we actually go to where the paths are, the city is not impressive at all, unfortunately. So let us approach the city from the main roads and see how it looks. See, like once we get to here, I mean, it's kind of okay. It's not that impressive. The trees are nice. The trees in the rift are very pretty. But the road is not even here. The road is all the way back here. So this has like a similar problem to Solitude, right? So the roads don't really show you anything. Let me step back a little bit. Can we see it from a distance? Like if I just kind of walk backwards along this road, you can kind of see it through the trees. You can kind of see it through the trees, but not really. I mean, we go back here, you can kind of see it through the trees, but it's not... unlike for Whiterun and unlike for Windhelm, where like the paths leading to Windhelm literally frame the city in between the rocks for you, right? But here, like, you can kind of see it in the distance, but not really. I guess the trees are prettier. I guess you're supposed to just look at the trees and not pay too much attention to the city. Like, the city is pretty grey and brown in comparison to how pretty the trees are. Look at the colors. Amazing. I love this place. So yeah, like the city is like a nothing city. You can't really see it from the side. Let me just walk all the way up to the city and we'll see how that looks. These trees though, look at them. So you get to here and you kind of see like a rooftop behind the trees. and you kind of see the dock through the trees. Okay, so here you see the city, you do, but it's not that appealing, is it? I mean, it's grey and brown and ordinary, to be honest. Like, it's not the most photogenic city. And this is the front. This is like the better part. So I'll show you the back. The back is a serious problem. The back is like this. Nobody drew concept art of the back of Riften, I can tell you that much. Because the back of Riften looks like this. Nobody drew concept art of this. So this is like a different road, but this is not actually a door. I don't know why that is. So the city has 2 doors, and it's like a separate road here, which leads nowhere. The back of Riften looks like that, right? Like, nobody drew concept art of this. No concept artist would draw something like this. So it's just the back of the city. Nobody designed this. They just put a wall here, and that's it. Which you might say, well, this is kind of like the back of the back of Windhelm, right? Because we're at the edge of the map. Nobody goes over here. I mean, there's really not much over here, so you don't come this way very often, except Fort Dawnguard is here. Fort Dawnguard is here, and so if you're like me and you don't fast travel when you play the game properly, then you walk from Fort, like when you do those quests at Fort Dawnguard, you walk back and forth here a lot, and you see the back of the city a lot. So under very specific circumstances, you will see Fort Dawnguard. Fort Dawnguard, if you don't know, is DLC. So it wasn't part of the original game. It was like an add-on that they added on later on. So in a way, you can't really blame them. Like, maybe, it's not. Anyway, the back of the city is ugly. Is what I'm trying to say. And not the good kind of ugly, right? Not the Windhelm kind of ugly, but like seriously bad, not designed kind of ugly. So let's get away from this because nobody wants to look at this, really. We'll just pretend this thing doesn't happen. So the path from this side, so there's like a path that way and a path that way. The path actually leads down here, so I guess you're supposed to walk up from down there, right? So there's a separate path across the lake, so you can see that there's the paved road and the unpaved road. So there's a road over here to this farm. And the view from the city from this side, you can actually go into your house from here as well. So there's the main city gates, but your dwelling, the back of your dwelling, you can go upstairs and go into your own house from the outside of the city. So that's kind of convenient in that sense. If you walk around this side of the lake, here's a farm. So every city has a farm so far. Yeah, every city has a farm. Although the one in Solitude is kind of too small, and there's a troll here. Interesting. And there's a dead guard here. Who's gonna take his money? So the view of the city from this side, it's kind of there, but it's also kind of blocked by the trees. So, it doesn't look bad, but it's like nobody really considered the placement of the trees, whereas in some of the other places, the trees would frame views for you, whereas here the trees they're just there, and they block the view more than anything. So there's the city from this side. Again, not very impressive, is it? Riften is not visually impressive, and I think it's deliberate. I think it is deliberate, but I don't know. I don't know about being deliberately ordinary. You know what I mean? Anyway, so this is the other main road. And if you follow this all the way to the end, you'll end up in Windhelm. So there's the city. Okay, I guess this is slightly better designed. So if we just run a little bit. If we start all the way back here, then we can't see the city at all. Alright, so there's that's cool. The watchtowers are cool, look at that. Watchtower, watchtower, watchtower. So there's layers of watchtowers. That's kind of cool. So as you come up and around, okay, I see. So here's and also the open roads, right? So the roads don't really have anything bracketing you into the road, unlike some of the other roads in other parts of the game, especially at the start of the game. You remember those? Remember that road near Riverwood, where there's always stuff bracketing you into the road, whereas here it's just kind of open? Okay, so let's say you start here. Alright, that's what I see. So there's a giant rock there, and then the road curves around. The road curves around this giant rock, and you are the three towers are revealed to you. Alright, three towers, that's impressive. Although it doesn't really have anything to do with the city itself. And then you weave your way through the three towers, and then around this rock. The road goes around the rock, and that's not impressive. Look at that, it's just the thing. That's just the gates. It doesn't even look good. Anyway, alright, so there you go, that's Riften. It's the best view of Riften is in the middle of the lake. So I don't know, I just don't think it seems like a waste of time. Because when you put the best view of the city in the middle of the lake where nobody really goes, then people play the game for hundreds of hours and they might never actually see that view because nobody goes there. Kind of like Solitude. Whereas if you like draw the concept art from here, for example, like put the best view of the city here, then everybody walks up to the city gates and they see the best view. So the way I think about it is, if you're gonna spend time, if you have a limited amount of time to spend on concept art, then draw the concept art from the perspective of the player. Whatever the player sees, draw that view, because the concept art is always going to be the best part of the best design part of the game, because this is where you spend the most time just kind of coming up with good looking things, right? And so if you draw it from the eyes of the player, then you're kind of guaranteeing that the player will see the concept art, which in some places this was kind of true. But in Riften, it is not true. So in Windhelm and in Whiterun, it was mostly true, but not in Riften. Alright, before we go into Riften, let me just read a book. So there's no book that describes Riften fully, but there is a little bit of history in a book called Of Crossed Swords, or Of Crossed Daggers. Wait a minute. Do I have it? Oh no. Oh no! Where is it? Oh, there it is. Of Crossed Daggers. The history of Riften. So we have the history, we don't really have the architecture. Let's read this. This is kind of interesting. Situated in the eastern banks of Lake Honrick, the city of Riften serves as a reminder of a bygone era. The once proud streets and buildings have vanished and been replaced by a collection of wooden structures and rough stonework, shrouded in a permanent fog-like mist. In order to understand how such a large city became nothing more than a glorified fortress, one need only look to the history book for answers. So, I mean, even the in-game lore acknowledges that the city is not very interesting, and like it's a glorified fortress is basically what it is. Like there's nothing fascinating about it. Riften was a major hub of activity for trade caravans and travelers to and from Morrowind. Fishing skiffs could be seen dotting the lake at all hours of the day, and the bustling city was alive with activity at night. The city guard was formidable and maintained a tight grasp on its populace, keeping them safe from harm. The marketplace in Riften was also quite a draw, containing numerous stands offering wares from across Tamriel. In the 4th Era 98, amidst the confusion of the Void Knights, Hosgun Crossdaggers was installed as Jarl when the previous Jarl had been assassinated. Although many believed that Hosgun was responsible and cries of protest filled the street of Riften, the Jarl took the throne and immediately took action to protect his station. Using the city guard, he had the streets cleared of protesters and initiated a curfew. Any caught breaking the curfew was immediately jailed without process or executed if it was a repeat offense. For over 40 years, Hosgun ruled Riften with a black heart and an iron fist. He imposed ridiculous taxes upon his subjects and any merchants that wished to sell their wares within the city walls. Hosgun kept most of the coin for himself, using it to construct a massive wooden castle with unnecessarily lavish quartering within. So the castle is unnecessarily lavish, but the rest of the city is not. The castle took 7 years to build and became a visual reminder of the people's oppression, which earned it the nickname Hosgun's Folly. So it's a massive wooden castle, right? Towards the end of his reign, the streets of Riften became littered with refuse and its people plagued by disease and hunger. Then in 4th Era 129, the people finally had enough. With their numbers, they were able to temporarily overwhelm the city guard long enough to set Hosgun's Folly on fire, with the greedy Jarl still within. As the fighting recommenced, the fire spread through the city unchecked. By the morning, the people had emerged victorious, but not without great cost. Most of the city was now in ruins and many had died. It took 5 years to rebuild Riften into the smallest city that it is today. Actually, no, so the palace was burnt down along with the whole city. So everything that exists now is new. So presumably there's no old buildings in the city. We'll take a look at that. It took 5 years to rebuild Riften into the smallest city that it is today, and even though over 50 years had passed since then, it still has yet to fully recover. Some believe it will never achieve the level of affluence it saw at the beginning of the Fourth Era, but there are a few who still hold on to the hope that Riften can return from the ashes and become a center of commerce once again. So it's a somewhat diminished city, and a great fire burned all the old buildings. So all the buildings here should be less than 50 years old, or about 50 years old. Let's see if this is true. Alright, that looks right. Nope, that's right. 50 years? About 50 years. So the stonework might be older, because stone doesn't burn as much as wood does. So all the wooden stuff is about 50 years old. And yeah, I mean, you can see it. So there's a lot less rotting than in Windhelm, as you can see. So the city... Oh great, there's a thief. So the main street goes through here, and I guess the main feature, one of the main features of Riften is the canal. There's a canal that goes through the city, and this chicken is running away. So the canal is there. You can't actually open the canal or anything. So presumably outside is the lake, and then the canal comes through here. There's a lot of wooden structures. Actually, these paths are... Oh, they're platforms, I see. And the stone actually extends straight down. Fascinating. Right, so the canal is there, and the main street curves around. There's the marketplace. There's the temple. I'm just gonna show you the layout first. So the main street is basically the canal, and then the canal goes back onto the lake here. So there's like a U shape. If I can, let me see a local map. Okay, there we go. So there's the gate, and then there's another gate there. And so then the canal is this U shape in the middle. And then there's the marketplace in here. And then there's a bunch of houses out here, and a temple there, and then the palace is over there, right? So the palace is behind the second set of walls up there. In fact, it's stone. That's interesting. It's a stone palace, a stone keep, a Mistfell keep. Which I don't know. I don't know how old this is. It could be less than 50 years old. It doesn't look like it though. The stone is kind of rough. You can see. So in comparison to the Solitude stone, this is like a rougher stonework than Solitude. But smaller stones than Windhelm. So it's a different kind of technology. It's a different kind of technique. So there's the other city gate there. The canal is there, and then if we cross the bridges. So this is the market over here, right? And then there's a few shops here. There's a lot of thieves, wow. Let me just leave those guys alone. So the blacksmith is here, and then the tavern is here in the middle of town, and then there's a few more shops over here. And then there's the canal again. Alright. So let me just take a close look at these buildings. About 50 years old timber buildings, sure. That's about right. This is the bunkhouse. So the poor people bunk here. It's like a hostel. Small windows though, this is interesting. So small windows, especially at the ground level, is quite unfriendly, right? Because like nobody, like if there are small windows or no windows at ground level, it means that the people inside the buildings don't really interact with the people outside the buildings. So all these houses are like little fortresses with kind of stone walls underneath, and like people don't really interact with the street. Like when you're at home, you don't interact with the street, which is...
Never could get the hang of that.
I mean, it's not that unusual, but if you compare this to, for example, Whiterun, like there's a lot of windows on the ground level at Whiterun, and so it's friendlier. Basically, people it kind of implies that people are friendlier to each other if there are a lot of ground floor windows because people are willing to open their windows to people. You know what I mean? Whereas if there's a lot of thieves or you don't trust people, which actually there are a lot of thieves in Riften, in that case, then you wouldn't open the ground floor windows because you don't trust the people outside. So there's the mistrust that is characterized by the lack of windows, right? This is the house you can buy if you buy a house in the game, Honeyside. And yeah, so all the buildings look about the same age, about 50 years old. Like, you can see the logs, the same logs are used over and over again, and the same stonework is used over and over again. I mean, the one thing is that they're reusing textures in the game. I mean, there's that. But also in terms of just the lore and the history of the city, it means that the whole city was all built at the same time, and this is not always the case because if we think about Solitude, supposedly Solitude, like the Castle Dower, the different parts of Castle Dower was built in several stages, and they were like kind of square towers and then circular towers, and so there were different styles because they were built at different times. And was there different materials? Oh, and in the city walls of Whiterun, there was the stone walls, and then there's the wooden stuff on top of it. So different materials, different styles, because the buildings were built over different periods of time. And so then you kind of different things cobbled on top of each other. Whereas here, we have all the buildings are built around the same time, and so they're all the same style, they're all the same materials, and they all look pretty much the same. Because, the city burnt down and it was rebuilt 50 years ago. So, that building looks pretty much the same as this building because of that. And sometimes that happens, like if you have a city or have a part of a city that's been built very quickly, then often it looks all the same. Whereas if you go to a historic city, like a really old city, then you see some old buildings and you see some new buildings, and there's a lot more diversity in a city with a lot of history. So here we see very little diversity in the architecture, right? And that looks the same as that, and then that looks the same as that. So all these buildings look pretty much the same. It's all the logs. And even the logs, even the way these things are built. So the log cabin style, it's kind of like a low cost way to build because it's just logs. You take the logs and you stack them up. So you don't really plane them, you don't square them off, you don't have to cut them very much. You just kind of take the whole logs and just stack them up. So the way like this, like log cabins, it's a fast and cheap way to build things, if that makes sense, because you literally just take the trees, you strip the bark, and then just kind of stack the logs up. Whereas if you want to build something like that, you actually have to cut the wood, you have to plane the wood flat, or like plane the wood square, and then you have so that's a lot more work to kind of cut it square, right? So here you don't cut it square. So this sort of thing is faster to construct, but obviously it's a lot rougher. And not as fancy.
Skyrim, dead. These are dark times, my friend. Dark
so
times indeed.
There's the timber buildings, and then there's the stone stuff, which might be old, although there's moss on it. The stone stuff might be much older than 50 years. I'm not sure. This paving looks fairly well maintained. Much better maintained than in Windhelm, right? So I'm not sure. There's not really any weeds like in Solitude. So despite the city being relatively unfriendly and grey and closed off, I mean this is well maintained. The paving is well maintained. So maybe the management or the governance of the city is not too bad. And also if you like this sort of kind of wooden walkway, this stuff needs maintenance because as people walk over it day after day for years on end, eventually the timber will wear out, so you kind of have to replace the timber boards every now and then, every few years maybe, just to make sure it doesn't fall apart. And all of this, this is all well maintained. Like you don't see any cracks in the boards or anything, like nothing's broken off. So yeah, despite everything, I guess the city is well governed. I mean, you can tell this sort of stuff based on how the ground looks. Although, having said that, this is broken, right? And that's broken. So maybe not that well maintained. I guess the timber stuff is well maintained, but this tile stuff is a little bit cracked. And that's a little bit cracked, and the well is just dark. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I mean, this paving is good. For some, I don't know why this paving is all broken like this.
I find your wolfish grin unsettling.
Alright, so there's not too much else to say about the buildings, is there? They all look pretty much the same. Let me look at the more fancy stuff here. So there's an orphanage there, which is again the same log cabin style. The keep, the Mistvale Keep, is a stone structure. Somewhat European. So it's vaguely like Solitude, but the stones are rougher. But you know the shapes of things, like the semicircular arches, quite similar to Solitude. And I guess this means that the barracks there. I guess this means that the Imperial influence on Riften is also quite strong, and that also is true. There is quite a substantial Imperial influence on Riften. Maven Blackbriar, one of the noble people, is well known for her connections to the Empire. If you know the story of the game, if you don't, then just take my word for it. The city does have connections to the Empire. So back here, whose house is this? Maven. Oh, this is the Blackbriar. Yeah, the Blackbriars live here. So the most influential family outside of the Jarl lives right next to the castle. I mean, that makes sense. And they also have a pretty big house. So back here, we have a little bit of open space. Look at this paving. Look how clean this is. Well, I mean, there's a lot of leaves everywhere, but it looks like somebody's mown the lawn. Alright, so the garden is well maintained. There is a shrine to Talos back there. Should probably go back out to the front because there's a couple of shrines here. Let me just walk back here. So there's a back of the town. There's a dirt path back here. Nothing much to see except the ugly wall and the backs of the houses. I mean, it's not nice to have your entire city burned down, but if your entire city burns down, then you have the option to replan the city because you have to reconstruct the city from scratch. And when that happens, it offers opportunities for you to improve the city planning, because otherwise, like, you don't want to demolish people's houses when they're living in them. But since the Great Fire burned everything down anyway, then you can rebuild in a better way. And this is the sort of thing that happened in the Great Fire of London. So the Great Fire of London was pretty terrible, but then the city was kind of vulnerable to that. Like, there was a lot of wooden buildings kind of packed close together. So it was kind of like a disaster waiting to happen, to be honest. So the Great Fire of London happened, people died, the whole city burned down. And then afterwards they rebuilt the city, but they took the opportunity to widen the roads and to build better buildings and to kind of plan everything better. And so even though, I mean, it's a disaster and it's not a good thing, but still you can take the opportunity whenever there's a disaster like that to rebuild the city. Like, earthquakes are like that, wars are also like that, like when your city gets bombed into rubble. I mean, that sucks and you don't want to be there. But if it happens, you can rebuild the city however you want. So, I mean, I'm not saying you should do it. I'm not saying you should burn your city down just to do that. But if your city burns down, it is something to think about. Like, you want to rebuild it better than before and not just do the same thing. So here, like, the clean streets and the relatively well-ordered houses seems to suggest that has taken place. Like, it's very well planned. You can kind of see how all the buildings face the streets, and then even in the map, there's like a square. Well, that's missing, but all the buildings are laid out in a fairly orderly manner. So it seems to suggest that it has taken place. Whereas if you think back to Whiterun, if you can think that far, in Whiterun, the buildings were all kind of at different angles. I mean, it's more organic, but then it's like nobody really planned the city. People just kind of built houses wherever they felt like. Solitude was kind of the same. Like, Solitude had this weird like all the planning was in bits and pieces because the city grew over time, right? And so like each part of the city, like there was the shopping district and the residential district and the castle and the palace, like all the different parts had different planning and nothing lined up because presumably all the city like grew in bits and pieces. Whereas here everything mostly lines up, which is maybe an indication of the fact that the whole city was planned at the same time after the fire that destroyed it. So there's some houses there. Oh, and not really many. Oh, but the poor people are outside. That's right. I'll get back to the poor people. So here is the Temple of Mara. Architecturally, more or less the same as the other buildings. I mean, more symmetrical and taller, but otherwise the same materials and more or less the same shapes as the Temple of Mara. So even the Temple of Mara is nothing special. Can I have a look at the roof from here? Yeah, nothing special. Nothing all that special. And underneath the Temple of Mara there is also the Hall of the Dead. There you go. The Priest of Arche isn't there. We're not gonna go into any interiors yet. There is also the... Oh wait, let me go to the canal. Alright, so the canal and then there's the docks. So the upper city all looks the same. The canal, there are in fact buildings in the canals, and if you wonder where the poor people are in the canals. So apparently things are not as pleasant down here because of the water, and so everything is damp all the time, apparently. So if we look over to these... So the poor people live down there here, I believe. And in fact one of these is... no, not that one. Where are we? Let me just look at the door. So the apothecary, the people selling the potions are down here. For some reason the potion guy likes the damp. And then... Beggars Row, there you go. I mean, the name tells you the poor people live here, like the beggars live here. So the thing with canal cities is that in the moderately olden days, back before there were cars and trucks and trains, but where they had the technology to build canals, a number of cities had a lot of canals built in them. Like Venice was historically always like a city of canals and bridges. Some of the cities in Scandinavia, I believe, have some interesting canals in them. So like before there were trucks, I mean the way if you need to transport heavy goods around a city, the easiest way would be to put it on a boat and then just float the boat around the city through the canals. But to do that, of course, you have to build the canals. So it takes a huge investment to construct the canals. But once the canals are constructed, then you can use boats to transport things around relatively easily, like far more easily than if you have a horse-drawn carriage. Because like if you're floating in the water, there's just less friction, basically, and so you can move things around easier. And so port cities, where trade is a big thing, a lot of them build canals to transport goods around, like networks of canals even. And so this, like Riften, it harkens to those cities, and it's a reference to those cities, with the suggestion that Riften is actually historically an important port city. And it kind of is, if you remember the book. It's let me just get out of world map. So Morrowind is here. So this is the gateway to Morrowind. So presumably the traders would sail up this river, although there's actually you can't because there's waterfalls here. If we pretend there's no waterfalls here, then presumably people can sail through the river network. And out here, I think they can do that. Yeah, okay, the river goes up here, so you can kind of, if there were no waterfalls here, then you can kind of sail up to Riften, and the river also goes to Whiterun, and then it goes over here, although it dead ends here, although it's kind of close to Falkreath, but not really. So the river network, there's a few waterfalls, so it doesn't really work like that, but then you can get over to the coast, You can reach Dawnstar, and then you can come in here. You can reach Solitude. So the waterways allows for easy transport of goods, and so this is like Riften is supposedly like a port, the closest port to Morrowind, and so any trade with Morrowind would go through Riften is the idea. And so with all the trading, the idea is that a lot of goods will come through the canals of Riften. But as you can see, it doesn't really happen right now, and since we like the book that we just read earlier says that ever since the Great Fire, like Riften has not really been a big port city, and also Morrowind has been destroyed by the volcano at Red Mountain. So there's no trading with Morrowind really, because the whole province was kind of destroyed by the volcano. So yeah, so now Riften is not the port city that it used to be, but the canal is still here. Because why would you get rid of the canal? So that's kind of the story. So like it's kind of a port city, but it's not right now. It's not really a port city. Anyway, so outside the city there's the docks. So let me go back out here. And I believe these are mostly fishing docks. Although you would imagine that if there was trade, then there would also be shipping docks as well. I think there's warehouses.
Best offense is a good defense, am I right?
So there's a meadery here making a brewery, brewing mead. Over here there is the fishery, I believe. Where's the door? Here it is. So here's a fishery, there you go. Fishery. Riften Fishery. So it's a fishing dock. Not really a trade port. Presumably that's like a fishing ship.
Tidings.
And they'll go out and catch fish. Look at all those fishing lines. Yeah, alright, so this is a fishing ship. Oh, there's the fish. Check it out. And then I think there's also a warehouse. It's a bunch of Argonians working on the docks as well. So there's a warehouse. So the meadery, there's the fishing docks, and then the warehouse is this one. Right? Right, yeah, Riften warehouse. So there's a bit of trading, a bit of fishing, but not much. Not much trading, to be honest. And that's Riften. Can we get a good view of the city from here? So again, like the waterways, the bridges, the buildings on the water is kind of amazing. Again, kind of reminiscent of Venice, just not anywhere near as pretty as Venice, of course. Everything is grey and stone and grey. And not attractive in Riften, but it is a canal city. So like, you know, even here, there's canals. I mean, it's kind of halfway there. It's halfway there. Like with the canal city like this, I wish there was more trade. You know what I mean? I wish there were like boats, just kind of traveling through the canals, carrying goods back and forth all the time. Like I want to see that, but like the game doesn't really have any of that. The game just has a city on the water, and there's no economics. Is what I'm trying to say. It's a bit of a shame, but if we use our imagination and we imagine that that's what the city is supposed to be like, and there's like traders bringing goods from far away all the time, that would be interesting. Alright, let's go inside these buildings. Presumably the fire would not have burned down these buildings, although you never know, right? Because first of all, these are stone buildings. Secondly, they're on the water. So presumably the fire would have burned down the stuff in the city proper, but not the stuff out here. Still, they all look like they're the same age.
It is our most.
Oh crap, it's locked.
Don't suppose you'd enchant my
So
sword?
all the buildings of the city are pretty much the same age, and they look like they're the same age. Can I go inside here? No. Can I just pickpocket my way in here? I mean, lockpick my way in here? Okay, there's no one in here. Alright, good. I'm alone. Oh, that's interesting. There's like there's a fish farm Oh really? There's a fish farm in here? That's cool. So the fishery, they don't just catch fish, they actually breed fish down here as well. That's cool. The interior is remarkably well maintained. I mean, there's no mold, there's no spider webs. Everything's really clean. You see that? Everything's really clean. Nothing's broken. The floorboards aren't broken. The walls and ceilings aren't broken. So everything is relatively new and well maintained. I think I'm technically trespassing. Alright, so I mean, this is kind of interesting because like it's a fishery, but it looks quite fancy. It looks really new. Does this look 50 years old? It looks less than 50 years old, to be honest. Unless it's just really well maintained. It looks a little bit less than 50 years old. And because it's sitting in the water, like you would think there'd be barnacles or stuff like that down here. I mean, there's a little bit of seaweed or like waterweed. I'm not sure. It looks a lot less than 50 years old. I'm just saying. Okay, let's go back outside and see what the rest of the city looks like. So the outside is all mossy and stuff, but the inside is really well maintained. Let's come over here, check the warehouse out. There's spider webs, but aside from the spider webs, again, like if you look at the materials, like the floors are, you know, completely undamaged, and so are the walls and so are the ceilings. I mean, either they built this stuff really sturdy to begin with, or it's well maintained. There's skooma and moon sugar. Alright, well everything's well built and well maintained, and like there's no cracks in the floorboards or anything. So this seems like there's money in this city, you know what I mean? Like it's clearly not as fancy as Solitude, but it's better maintained than Whiterun, better maintained than Windhelm. Which seems to suggest that there is money in this city, just not obvious, right? It's not obvious that there's a lot of money sloshing around. Or maybe it's just the buildings aren't old. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. The furnishings are ordinary. There's nothing too fancy about them. So this is the meadery. They make mead in those barrels.
I'm the brewmaster around here. What did you want?
So the furniture is medium wealth, I think. They're not the fanciest stuff, but they're also not the worst. Not that many decorations. Mostly, you know, it's mostly functional, but well maintained. Functional and well maintained. Interesting. This is a bedroom, and again, the furnishings are kind of rough. Actually, no, it's pretty rough. It's a straw bed. Alright, so I don't know. It seems a little contradictory to me. Like it's simultaneously well maintained and kind of poorly furnished. Alright, so there's the docks, and there's the fishery, and there's the meadery. Let's go take a look around the buildings. So we're back in the market, right? Now we're back inside the city. The market, let me just check the stores. Nothing special about the stores. Alright, so the blacksmith. Let's see what it looks like. Huh. It's different texture, so this is the log cabin on the inside as well. Does that mean they're richer or poorer? The furniture is the same as before. The furnishing is like there's the same rugs. The furniture is the same. Interesting. Everything looks the same. Or, you know, like all the furniture is the same. So, I guess they all have a similar level of wealth, or at least all the stuff we've seen so far have a similar
You've been a
level
good
of wealth.
friend.
They're all fairly functional. Alright, so let's go and check out the tavern,
What happened?
the Bee and Barb. It's the same. It's just the same textures and the same materials, the same level of maintenance, the same furniture. Everyone is the same level of wealth. Interesting. Who are you?
What's a milk drinker
Oh.
like you doing out here? Go home to your mother.
I'm gonna ignore her. Yeah, alright, so this is, I mean, architecturally it's not that interesting, it's just like a wooden house. You know what I mean? Like, it's not... There's no history because everything's 50 years old and not any older. You know, whereas back in Windhelm, there was a lot of history and it's really old. Oh, hey bro. Whereas everything here is kind of just not that interesting. Wow, hey, the city is not very interesting. The rooms are small, but serviceable. Oh crap, let's not do that. Let's go back down.
What's a milk drink?
So I guess
What's a milk drinker
these
like
are
you
the
doing out
medium
here?
wealth
Go home
areas.
to
So
your
let me
mother.
come into the bunkhouse. I think the bunkhouse is going to look the same as well.
You lost?
Yeah, same. Same as before. So all of these people are the same, they have a similar level of wealth. But the bunkhouse is like a bunkhouse for poor people. So poor people are supposed to sleep here because they don't have anywhere else to sleep. But it's pretty nice, the bunkhouse itself. It's well funded. Who funds this place? I'm not sure. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a hotel or a hostel. Anyway, so those are all similar. Medium wealth, nothing remarkable. Let's come down here. So this is definitely the poor people. Beggar's Row is definitely poor people. Right. It's a cave. It's a sewer, in fact. Kind of a sewer. And it's damp and it's actually dripping water. And they sleep on the ground. Alright, so these are the poor people. The poor people are really poor. I mean, they're literally beggars. And, alright, well, this is terrible. This is probably not sanitary for anyone. Like, there's literally standing water on the ground. Probably bad for your health. Alright, so the poor people live down here. I mean, I was saying that most people seem to be doing quite well, but then the poor people are doing really poorly. Let's check out the alchemist. So this is like a relatively wealthy person living in the canals. So you can see like the walls and the ceilings. It's pretty functional, but they've kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And there's a shop here, and the shop itself, like all of that, is pretty good. The chairs are actually pretty good quality.
You here for lessons like Ingen?
Furniture
Or
is
did you
normal
wish to
quality.
buy something?
Beds and cupboards are normal quality. Alright, so this is normal. Again, normal. Aside from the fact that they're inside they're underground. And they have a fire, really, and a chimney. That's pretty good. Alright, so this is like the same wealth level as the other guys before. Interesting, like there's so little diversity in the furnishings and in the circumstances of the people here. Can I like sneak into someone's house? So let's see if I can sneak into this person's house. And again, similar. I think, oh, the furniture is a little bit rougher. Look at that. The furniture is a little bit rougher. Although really more or less the same. A little bit rougher, not much. And a decent house. A decent house if you don't mind being next to the canal. Okay. Again, nothing special, is there? Okay, so now we've seen that. So there's a few poor beggars. Most of the people have very similar circumstances. Let me just check here. And same. The same thing. I don't know. Everything looks the same in this city, you know what I mean? Okay, let's see if we can find some rich people. So we do know... Actually, the orphanage. Let me just try the orphanage first. Orphanage? Would the orphanage have... Oh, no, the same. Everything's the same. Same texture, same level of maintenance, same furniture. Just a lot of children.
Things are much better now that Grelip is dead. But still, I'm sick of...
Alright, the orphanage is also the same as everything else. Let's go to the Blackbriar residence. So this is like the second richest family in town. Let's see what's going on here. It's a manor, so that it's supposedly good. And it's the same. The walls... Okay, the furnishings are fancier. The furnishings are definitely fancier, so they're one level fancier. But the building itself, like the floors and the walls, it's the same. The building is the same. The furniture is slightly wealthier, but aside from that... And the house is bigger, of course. The house is bigger. The furniture is slightly fancier, so the servants, I guess, live down here. And that's why this is the lower wealth... Oops, don't go in there. This is lower wealth stuff. Yep. Alright, and then upstairs is the fancy furniture and the fancy shelves and everything else. Riften upstairs? Do we have a fancy bed somewhere? It's a little bit fancy. It's a little bit carved headboard. Statue of the Bella. A fireplace on the top floor. Again, this is... Fireplaces don't really belong on the top floor because the stone is heavy. And heat rises anyway, right? Because heat rises, what you do is you put your fireplace on the ground floor and then the heat would naturally warm the entire house. You really should put the fireplace on the ground floor. Anyway, it doesn't really matter to me. Okay, so this is the Blackbriar Manor. Like, you know, architecturally, it's just the same. It's still the same. That's interesting. Well, it's not interesting, actually. It's uninteresting. It's interesting in how uninteresting it is what I mean. I find it curious that there's so little diversity in the architecture. So, if everything is the same, then we must conclude that the entire city, basically everything, all the buildings in the city now were built at the same time after the Great Fire, and they just built everything in the same style with the same materials, probably the same builders that did the whole thing. And so everything looks the same, or the textures look the same, and they're all at the same level of maintenance. Like, you know, nothing's falling apart more than any of the others because everything is just 50 years old. It's all the same stuff. So let's check the castle. So the Mistveil Keep at least should be unique and different. Okay, this is substantially different, right? So now we have this. Wow, hey, look at this floor. That's a really fancy floor.
Presence coming from Darklight Tower, southwest of the city. Some say the place is home to necromancers.
I'm not sure about the stones. I mean, even the stones seem like they're a different color, different texture from the rest of the city. So the keep itself might be from a different time. Although the ceiling, you'll notice, is pretty much like the same kind of ceiling as the other ceilings in the in the other buildings of the
You have
city.
vanquished a great evil from Skyrim.
So it
You
could
have
be
saved this
that,
land, and are very
you know, the ceiling at the very least was built also 50 years ago, but the stone is maybe older.
Back again? What is it this time?
Like this paving, we haven't seen anywhere else in the city, or indeed anywhere else in the game. So the small stones are interesting. Open fire in the middle. So this is reminiscent of Whiterun, right? Where there's like a feasting hall, and then there's the throne behind it. Although it's a lot smaller, although it's also quite tall. Not as tall as Dragonreach in Whiterun. So again, when I was in Whiterun, I was saying like the Dragonreach, it seems too big. It doesn't seem to fit the game. And as we see more and more of these castles and palaces, you can see how somehow the palace in Whiterun is bigger and fancier than all the others. But it shouldn't be, because they don't have money. Like the city walls, they don't have money to build the city walls. So there should be more money here in Riften than in Whiterun. But the palace in Riften is less impressive than the one in Whiterun anyway. But I won't go on about that too much. So well furnished, a lot of furniture, high quality desks with a lot of little carved little bits, and carved little bits in the chairs as well. I find this floor really fascinating, like these kind of small stones. What is it? I don't know what these stones are. Presumably they're expensive stuff. Is it tiles or is it blocks of stone? Not sure what I'm looking at. Looks pretty cool though, look at that. And like the texture of it makes everything seems really busy. Alright, so the wooden stuff is the same. The stone stuff is fancier than the other stone stuff in the rest of the city. Let's go upstairs.
In honor of your service in battle, I am hereby granting you permission to purchase property in Riften. Talk to my steward.
So like we're back here, so the timber floor looks kind of the same as everything else. The timber ceilings also look kind of the same as everything else in town. It's only the stone walls that are a little bit different. The barracks are back there. Do we need to see the barracks? I don't think so. I don't know. Riften seems really uninteresting, and I guess we have to put it down to the fact that everything is 50 years old, and so everything just looks the same. I mean, once you get up here, look at this. Again, it's the same floorboards, the same walls, the same ceilings. Even the keep, which suggests that, you know, the keep was burned down. So it's a stone keep, but it's got timber interiors, and the interiors were burned down. But the stone walls and the floor remained, and so then they rebuilt the timber stuff and reused the stone stuff. And so the stone is different because it's older, but then the timber stuff looks the same as everything else in the city because it's the same, it was built at the same time. That's what the design of this place suggests to me, if I'm reading it right. Let's go check out the barracks, and then there's the Thieves Guild. Oh, is this the wrong way? No, this is the right way. There's also the Thieves Guild. So there's that. There is a little bit of special stuff in Riften. Barracks.
Godlike white.
Uh,
Lightly armored means light on your feet.
huh.
Smart.
Same floors. Interesting. And the same walls and the same ceilings, even in the barracks. I mean, that is a little bit weird. In fact, it's a lot weird. Just think about it. The palace where the Jarl lives looks the same as the barracks where all the soldiers live. That's a little bit strange, because you would think that the Jarl would have more money than the soldiers. You would think that the Jarl's bedroom would be fancier than the soldiers' sleeping quarters. But aside from the furniture, I mean, the bed itself is fancier in the Jarl's quarters, but the building is not. Like the architecture is almost implausibly egalitarian in this city. like the extent. What's going on down there? Oh, they're training. Like the extent to which the quality of the buildings is the same is a little bit remarkable, and I'm not sure entirely what to make of it. Although again, so let me just look at the stone again. So this stonework is kind of haphazard, to be honest. So there's like all different shapes and sizes of stones kind of cobbled together to build those walls. Whereas if you look at these stones, these have been cut. So like they're parallel rows like that, or mostly parallel, that's a bit big. So mostly parallel rows, so these stones have been cut, whereas those stones seem like they haven't been cut, they've just been kind of picked. Like this stuff, they've just been kind of selected for the right shape, and then they're kind of put in place according to their natural shape. Whereas these stones have been cut.
You're that from the college,
I
right?
think it's supposed to mean that this stonework is newer than the other stonework? Not sure. Well, let's go into the temple. So the temple of Mara, let's just check out the temple of Mara before we go into the Thieves Guild. Timber. A lot of timber. And the same kind of timber,
Welcome, temple messenger.
the same kind of timber as the rest of the city, except bigger. So the interior is bigger, there's a big empty space. But the furnishings and the walls and the rooms are the same again. The same again. And this is, it's a little bit weird. It's a
Yes?
little bit weird, or it's a lot weird actually, because no, in every city, in the three biggest cities, in Whiterun, in Solitude, and in Windhelm, there were like there were three tiers of wealth. Like there were poor people, there were rich people, and then there were the Jarls. And there were like clearly three tiers of wealth. Whereas in Riften, there are like two beggars. But otherwise, everyone else seems to be on the same tier of wealth. Or, you know, if you just look at the beds, there's at most two tiers. Like really fancy beds and then straw beds. But it's not seen in the architecture, right? It's only seen in the furniture. I don't know, I feel like it's just less interesting because there's less diversity. So let me go to the Thieves Guild, and I'm gonna go the long way because we want to see like the sewers as well. So this is, what is it called? The Rat Way. So there's tunnels underneath the city. And the Thieves Guild, as you might expect, is inside these tunnels. So this is the long way into the Thieves Guild. And to get there you have to deal with a couple of people, these two people, who sleep down here. So there's like a city underneath the city, and then there's like a... we open the trapdoor there so we don't have to go the long way. And everything's dripping and disgusting and wet. It probably smells pretty bad down here too. And then the Ragged Flagon is where the Thieves Guild is. It's a cistern underground, so there's like a... this is like... I think this is where the town gets its fresh water from. But people also have a secret base, the Thieves Guild have a secret base down here, and there's shops. There's shops that serve the Thieves Guild down here. And water. I think the well, I think the city well is supposed to be up there. That there is the city well. So the market, I think, is supposed to be right above our heads. And the people draw their water from here, not knowing that the Thieves Guild is down here. It's kind of weird. But kind of cool, look at that. So there's like a cistern underneath, and people live here. Well, they don't live here, but they work here. I think they live here too, actually. And there's a tavern. So this is a... the Ragged Flagon is a tavern. It's a hidden tavern underneath the city. It doesn't really make sense in a way, because the Ragged Flagon is supposed to be open to the public, but it's hidden in the cistern, and it's hidden behind a maze. So it's not really open to the public. But when you play the game and you come down here, the Like you talk to the barkeep, which is Vico the man. Like, you talk to this guy, and he talks to you as though you're a customer at the tavern, as though the tavern actually serves customers besides the Thieves Guild, but it doesn't really serve any customers besides the Thieves Guild, because to even get down here, you have to kill a bunch of people who are also trying to find the Thieves Guild. So it's kind of a tavern, but it's not actually a tavern, and I don't know who would think that this is actually a tavern, given that it's like a hidden base underground. Anyway, so it's all wacky and strange. And then behind here, through a false cupboard, is the rest of the Thieves Guild. So there's like another cistern. Actually, no, maybe is the marketplace above here or above the other one? I don't know. So there's another one here. And so this is the Thieves Guild proper, right? And there's your bed, and then there's the other bed. I mean, it's kind of cool. There's like 2 circular rooms inside the sewers, and then there's a few side rooms. There's a training room back here. If you want to train, what's he shooting at? Oh, he's shooting up there. Interesting. Cool. So these guys are training, and for some reason the sleeping quarters is like in the public space in the middle. Like all the beds are here, so everyone sleeps together in the same space. The treasury is back there, but it's not open. And then
Need something?
you can exit back here as well, back to Riften. So the Thieves Guild, it's like a hole in the ground. It's not. I mean, conceptually, sure, it's a hole in the ground. It makes sense. It certainly makes sense. I'm just thinking it's not that impressive. Like there's 2 holes in the ground, and that's where the Thieves Guild are. I don't have much else to say about this. I mean, historically, it's not that interesting because the history of Riften was wiped out 50 years ago by the fire, and so everything we see now is just new and uninteresting because there's no history to it. Everyone seems to live at the same level of prosperity. I mean, the streets are unfriendly because of the lack of windows, but aside from that, there's nothing special about the city. I'm just, I wish there was more to say, but it's a really unremarkable city. Okay, well, I guess I should end the video here if I don't have anything else to say. But you know, in a way, new cities are like this. Or, I mean, new suburbs, I guess. I mean, if you imagine a new suburb, it really isn't very interesting. I don't know if you've kind of been to like a newly built suburb as people have just started to move in. I mean, it is like that. It's like all the buildings are kind of the same, and like there's no personality because people have just moved in and they haven't really personalized their houses, and so like new suburbs are boring, is what I'm trying to say. And Riften feels like that. It feels like a new city it's not old enough to have character. It's not old enough to have character, I suppose. Except the canal. I mean, the canal is old. The keep is half old. If anything, I mean, and again, I said earlier that I was kind of disappointed by how unremarkable the canal is, because the canal, of all the things in Riften, the canal you would expect is the one thing that has character, but even that has no character because there's no ships going through it. Like a canal city like Venice
Now,
has
I
a
know
lot
who
of
you are,
character.
and I know your business. Just please, these are good folk we got.
Dude, shut up.
Mostly.
You know, like a lot of canal cities, they have a lot of character because there's ships. Mostly it's all the ships moving back and forth all the time, and it's interesting to live in a port city like that. Because there's always ships coming in, and there's always kind of new things coming in, different people, like ships from different parts of the world. Port cities are interesting because, you know, people travel from a long way to come to your port. And Riften doesn't have that, and it just seems like it feels like a missed opportunity to make this place really interesting. But I guess that's the nature of the story of the game, I mean, Morrowind's destroyed and there's a civil war going on, so there's not that much trade. But imagine if like there's an elven ship or something coming in, and maybe there's like a Redguard ship coming in, or there's like a Khajiit ship coming in. Imagine if there's like ships coming from different parts of the continent, and they're all in different styles, and they bring in different goods to trade. That would be so interesting. But that's not this city, that's Solitude, isn't it? Solitude is a port city that's vibrant, and it's got a lot of trade. Riften, not so much. Alright, well, it's a boring city, that's a summary of it. Alright, so I'm going to end the video here, because I can't really think of anything interesting to say. Like, all the buildings look the same, and they're all... It's all just about not interesting. It's not that interesting, it's just all new, and... maybe it's supposed to feel a little fake. It does feel a little fake that way, like a new suburb. Like, people don't really live here. You know what I mean? Because it's so new and there's no character. It's like, do people really live here? Maybe it's supposed to feel that way. It's supposed to feel a little...
Divine smile on you, friend.
What's the word? Uncomfortable? Or uneasy? Yeah, I think it's supposed to feel uneasy and maybe a little fake, like it's hiding something. And it is, because the Thieves Guild is here. So the whole point of the city is that it's hiding the Thieves Guild. So everything that you see, like the appearance, is not the reality. Like, the reality is that the Thieves Guild operates underneath the city, and like everything above is just like a cover for it. So maybe that's deliberate. Maybe the fact that it's so unremarkable and it seems so boring is deliberate, because you want it to feel a little too normal, if that makes sense. Like, it's a little too normal, and so it feels fake. It's really, I mean, if that was the intent, it's really subtle. And they've done it. It's really subtly done, though. I can't tell if it's really clever or if it's just boring. I can't tell if the city is really, really clever or just boring. Huh. Alright, well, I'm gonna stop that there. Anyway, so this is a city. It's it looks like a city, but there seems to be nothing there. There seems to be a mask that's hiding something else. Alright. So in the next video we'll go to Markarth. I'll see you there.